My name is Ava Sterling. I'm 34. And for a living, I weigh the worst days of other people's lives and try to choose what's best for their children. I thought that job made me fireproof. It didn't. The night it all cracked open began with a wine glass trembling in my hand, candlelight throwing nervous shadows across a linen tablecloth, and my sister's smile honed to a blade. You judge other people's families, Ava, Renee said, voice sugar slick, because you don't have one of your own. Laughter died mid-breath around the table. My mother went still. My father folded his napkin into a nervous rope. And then Mark Dalton, Renee's fiancé, pushed back his chair with a scrape that made the chandelier shiver. He didn't look at Renee. He looked at me. You're the judge. Tonight, he said evenly. Tell them what happened 5 years ago. My pulse misfired. The corridors I'd bricked up inside me flooded with old echoes. Motel wallpaper the color of stale nicotine. A bathroom fan that rattled like a weak heart. A toddler's breath hitching between sobs. I could have swallowed it. I'd swallowed everything for years in the name of peace. But Mark knew. Somehow, he knew. And as everyone stared, the old rules. Don't embarrass the family. Don't disturb the arrangement. Don't outshine the golden child. Fell away like dust in a draft. 5 years ago, I said, and made my voice calm because the truth deserved steady hands. Renee called me at 3 in the morning. She was at a motel off Route 19, high and bruised. In the corner, there was a little girl, barefoot, shivering, watching the door like it might bite. No one knew about her. Not you. Mom, not you. Dad, not me. Her name was Lila. A fork paused halfway to my cousin's mouth. My aunt shut her eyes. I remembered how Lila's hair stuck to her forehead with fever, the way her feet curled on cold carpet. I drove them to the hospital. CPS arrived. They were going to place Lila with strangers, and I couldn't let that be the next chapter of a life that had barely begun. I took her home. I became bedtime and breakfast and dinosaur songs and nightmares soothed at 2 a.m. She called me Aunt A. I called her my bright thing. Renee's mouth was a straight line. You gave her up, she said. Brittle. I gave her back to you. I corrected. After rehab, after promises, after you said James would help you raise her, I waited for my mother to remember how she'd praised Renee's fresh start. For my father to recall buying baby clothes as if intention alone could build a future. What I didn't tell them then, because pity is a cage, was what happened 2 months later. The stab of pain, the emergency room's fluorescence, the word rupture, then infection, then loss carried in clinical syllables. When I woke, the surgeon's eyes were kind and annihilating. Infertile, a door closing with infinite softness. I told no one. I learned to fold my grief into work, into rulings, into neat language that never bled. Mark's voice came like a thin crack in glass. After you returned Lila, he said, not looking at Renee. She was abandoned again. Papers had taught him what family would not. Court records, case notes, a call from a boyfriend when Renee left. Lila went into the system. 4 placements in 3 years. The room tipped. I saw myself at the bench signing orders about the best interests of the child, while my niece drifted from sofa to spare bed to folded sheet on a floor. I steadied the wine glass on the table because my hands had their own ideas about falling. Renee's chair scraped backward. You had no right, she hissed. Cheeks blazing. No right to humiliate me. Mark didn't move. You did that yourself the minute you mocked the woman who carried your child when you wouldn't. My mother reached for a script she'd used my whole life. Girls, please. I stood. My voice wasn't loud, but it carried. This isn't about choices I made to keep the peace. It's about the choice you made to leave Lila a second time. You didn't even call me? Renee's eyes flashed. I was drowning, and instead of reaching for a hand, I said, you let a child go under? I walked out before anyone could ask me to sit and smile through dessert. Outside, the night was thin and bright, breath-slicing cold. I drove home with both hands white on the wheel and opened my laptop like a gate. There is a place where my authority ends and my responsibility begins. And sometimes they are not the same place. I filed an emergency inquiry with Child Protective Services at 12 11 a. I listed everything I could prove and everything I would swear to under oath. Prior guardianship, medical records, photographs of a purple stuffed rabbit named Mr. Hops, therapy appointments, a song about a baby dinosaur afraid of the dark. I wrote that I would not leave again. Then I sat in the kitchen and waited out the night with the porch light burning like a vigil. 2 days later, the caseworker called. Her tone was brisk, professional, but there was a seam of gentleness stitched through it. Lila Sterling had been located in Fairview, placed with a foster mother named Eleanor Reed, who specialized in kids wired by attachment trauma to trust only what is proven. 4 placements, gradual progress, words that were both balm and indictment. Can I see her? I asked, trying not to sound like someone begging at a locked door. We'll need to verify your prior role, she said. If you intend to petition for custody, start gathering documentation. I had already started. When I ended the call, the kitchen clock ticked a measured sentence. Go. Now. Try. Again. I found Eleanor's street by muscle memory, the way you sometimes drive to an old house without telling your hands. White bungalow. Toys on the lawn. I rang the bell and prepared to be tested. Eleanor opened the door like someone who had learned the hard way to let people in slowly. Early 50s. Hair streaked silver and pulled back. Eyes that took inventory without cruelty. You must be Ava, she said, standing enough aside for me to cross the threshold, but keeping a protective angle with her shoulder that told me this was a home built on careful boundaries. The living room smelled like laundry and cinnamon. Shelves bowed under the weight of picture books. Puzzles missing a piece or two. Small triumphs taped to the fridge with alphabet magnets. I saw a drawing. Stick figures under a triangle roof. A taller one holding the hand of a smaller one. At the bottom, in big, earnest letters, me and Anjay. The spelling struck first. Then, the earthquake of meaning. She remembers. Not the legal words, or the hospital corridors, or the promises I crafted, like origami to make a rough world gentler. She remembered a hand. I pressed my palm flat against my coat pocket to keep it from shaking. Eleanor watched my eyes find the paper. She mentions you sometimes, she said. Voice. Even. Not often. When she does, it's when she feels safe enough to try hope on. I swallowed the stone in my throat. I'm here to make hope boring, I said. Ordinary. Daily. Eleanor's mouth tugged like someone who wanted to smile, but had learned not to celebrate too soon. She motioned to the couch. She's due back from school in 15 minutes. We'll start simple. No big declarations. I'll introduce you as someone she knew when she was little. If she wants more, she'll ask. I nodded. I've lectured attorneys on the dangers of overpromising to a judge. I knew better than to overpromise to a child who has learned that exits are sudden. The bus exhaled at 3:47. Footsteps on the porch. A backpack thunked against the wall like a small, familiar argument. Then she was in the doorway. Longer lines where baby softness had been. Hair pulled into a lopsided ponytail. Eyes too watchful for 7. She froze when she saw me. Every muscle preparing for impact. Lila, Eleanor said gently. This is Miss Ava. She knew you when you were younger. The look Lila gave me was clinical, not cruel. Assessment, inventory, triage. I crouched so I wasn't a tower she had to defend against. Hey, I said, and my voice came out soft in a way I save for funerals and lullabies. We used to sing a song about a dinosaur who was scared of the dark. Do you remember? Her chin tilted, skeptical, then, like a rusty hinge giving the smallest crack. He got a nightlight made of stars, she whispered. Relief and grief hit at the same time. 2 trains crossing in my chest. He did, I said, and when the dark was loud, he counted them. She didn't run to me. That's a fantasy invented by people who've never waited for a child to decide you're safe. She stood, measuring, and after a long beat, took 1 step closer. That single step was more than most adults ever give. I stayed kneeling, not reaching. She flicked her eyes to Eleanor. Can she stay for dinner? Eleanor looked at me over the top of Lila's head. A quiet, are you able to be ordinary? I nodded. I'd like that. We ate spaghetti and garlic bread at a table with a notch carved in the wood from a dropped pan years back. Lila twirled noodles and considered me between bites. I asked about school the way you ask about weather in a courtroom, lightly. So the witness isn't coached. She answered in puzzle pieces. A teacher named Ms. Pike who draws stars on worksheets. A boy who brought a pet worm for show and tell and cried when he had to release it. A library book about a fox that hides in leaves. Progress. Eleanor would tell me later. Doesn't look like fireworks. It looks like a child not leaving the table. After dishes, Lila crossed the room and picked up a faded purple rabbit from the couch. Its ear had been sewn back on with thread that didn't match. She held it up like a badge. Like proof of age? Do you remember him? She asked. Mr. Hops, I breathed. You wanted a guard for the doorway. She nodded once. Solemn. He still watches. I could have cracked cleanly open then, but I've learned to let feelings pass like weather, not tidal waves that drown the person in front of you. He does a good job, I said. I checked. She was quiet for a long time, patting the rabbit's head with the clinical tenderness of someone who knows things break. Can you come back tomorrow? She asked it without looking at me, as if the request could be reeled back in if it was a mistake. Yes, I said, and I made sure the word landed like furniture, solid, heavy, hard to move. The next days were a practice of constancy. I arrived at the same time. I brought nothing but myself and a notebook I didn't open. I helped with math problems about apples and trains that never crash. I learned she likes her sandwiches cut into squares, not triangles. Because triangles look like mountains and mountains look like things that take too long. Some afternoons she ignored me completely, orbiting the room with a child's peculiar gravity. One afternoon she yelled, sudden and bright, "Where were you?" and barricaded herself in the bathroom, small feet braced against linoleum. I sat on the floor outside the door, back against cool plaster, hands open. Here, I said, not an apology, not a defense, just a location. 10 minutes later, the lock clicked and she emerged damp-cheeked, thrusting a hairbrush at me like a court order. Braids, she commanded. And I braided while she watched my hands in the mirror like they were writing the future. Mark texted, then called, then showed up with takeout and a box of file folders. I'm not here to fix anything, he said, setting the food down like an offering. I'm here to sign affidavits and carry boxes. We worked at my dining table after Lila went to bed in Eleanor's house across town. Prior guardianship documentation, pediatrician notes, therapy attendance logs, photographs date-stamped in a way that told the truth better than a speech. I knew what judges respect. Order, evidence, the absence of melodrama. I built the case I would have wanted to see from someone standing in front of me. Renee left me voicemails that smelled like gasoline. I saved them without listening. On the fourth evening, as I zipped my coat in Eleanor's hallway, Lila reached for my sleeve. If you leave now, she said, as if testing the beam for rot, will you be here tomorrow? I crouched again so my answer wouldn't fall from a height. Yes, I said. Tomorrow, and the day after, and the day after that, until we have a new plan written down by a judge. She considered this, and nodding, handed me Mr. Hobbs. Take him, she said. He can watch your door, too. I tucked the rabbit under my arm like a brief, holy thing. When I looked up, the guardedness in her face hadn't vanished, but it had made room for something else. Recognition, maybe, or the small spark of trust daring to try oxygen. 2 weeks after that first dinner, my living room had turned into a war room of affidavits, case files, and memories that refused to fade. I'd been on the other side of that table countless times, hearing, weighing, deciding, but never as the one whose heart was on trial. Now every line of evidence felt like a prayer whispered into paper. Prove I'm not doing this out of guilt. Prove love can be documented. Prove stability after chaos. Mark sat across from me, hair messier than I remembered. Pen tapping lightly on a legal pad. Do you want to be her guardian again? He asked. Or her parent? I looked up from the stack of documents, the question slicing deeper than he knew. I want to be whatever the court lets me be, I said. But if it were up to my heart, I'd be her mother, He nodded. Quiet. Then we'll build it that way. When the petition was filed, Renee's fury arrived like clockwork. Voicemails spitting venom. Texts that read like confessions of someone cornered. You always wanted my life, she screamed in one message. Now you can have the kid too. Her anger didn't surprise me. What broke me was her fear buried underneath it. Because beneath every insult was a sentence she wouldn't say. I can't fix what I ruined. Still, I didn't answer. I'd wasted too many years negotiating peace with someone who mistook silence for forgiveness. A week later, she showed up at my apartment. Her knock wasn't timid. It was a declaration. I opened the door to find her eyes wild, mascara smeared, the smell of cheap wine following her like a storm. You're destroying me, she hissed, stepping too close. You went behind my back. You stole my child. I held the frame of the door, steadying both of us. No, Renee, I said evenly. You lost her when you walked away. I'm just trying to bring her home, she laughed, sharp and bitter. Home. You think she needs your sterile apartment and your perfect rules? You think love is paperwork? Her voice cracked, and for a second, I saw it. The panic of a woman who knew the fight was already over. Go home, I said gently. If you keep doing this, you'll lose any chance of seeing her again. She spat a curse and fled, heels clattering down the hall. I closed the door, locked it, and leaned against it until the tremor in my hands passed. It was the last time I saw her before court. The day of the hearing came gray and cold. I arrived early, dressed in a simple black dress. No robe, no authority. Just a woman standing where the people I once judged had stood. The courtroom was smaller than I remembered. The benches rougher, the air heavier. My attorney organized our files with clinical precision, while I fought to steady the rhythm of my breath. When the bailiff called the session to order, I rose automatically, muscle memory from years of obedience to process. But this time, it wasn't ritual, it was surrender. Renee entered moments later, flanked by her attorney. She looked thinner, brittle. Her eyes flicked to me once, then away. Mark was in the gallery, a quiet anchor. Eleanor sat behind me, hands folded, a calm I borrowed to stay upright. The judge, an older woman I'd admired for her restraint, adjusted her glasses and began. My attorney spoke first. Clean facts, timelines, guardianship records, therapy notes, testimony from Eleanor about Lila's progress. Then I took the stand. My palms were damp against the Bible, but my voice stayed steady. I loved Lila the moment I met her. I began, not because she was my sister's child, but because she needed someone, and I could be that someone. I tucked her in at night. I held her through fevers. I made pancakes shaped like dinosaurs because she was afraid of the dark. I thought returning her to her mother was the right thing, the law's thing, but I was wrong. The law didn't see the way she clung to my hand or the way she cried when I left. I thought I was giving her family. I didn't know I was giving her away. I paused, breath catching. The judge watched me, expression unreadable but not cold. I'm here now, I said quietly, not as a judge, not as someone perfect. I'm here as a woman who loves her and won't leave again. Renee's attorney rose for cross-examination, tried to paint me as controlling, desperate for redemption. I let the questions come and answered with precision. No venom, no defensiveness, just truth laid bare. When it was Renee's turn to testify, she sobbed, painting herself as misunderstood, a victim of family betrayal. But when the records came out, CPS reports, financial misuse of child support payments, her story cracked under its own weight. The courtroom fell silent when the judge finally spoke. This court's duty, she began, is to serve the child's best interests, not the pride of the adults involved. The evidence shows a consistent pattern of neglect and abandonment from Mrs. Renee Caldwell. Conversely, Miss Ava Sterling has demonstrated long-term commitment, emotional stability, and the ability to provide a nurturing home. Therefore, full legal and physical custody of Lila Caldwell is granted to Mrs. Sterling, effective immediately. The words hit like absolution and punishment all at once. Renee shouted, "You can't do this. She's my daughter." The judge's gaze didn't waver. "You had years of chances. Ms. Caldwell. Security moved gently toward her, and she stormed out before they could touch her, door slamming behind her like a period at the end of a lifetime. I didn't move until the gavel fell. Then I turned, and Mark was there, smiling in a way that didn't gloat. Just steady, human. You did it, he said softly. No, I whispered. We did, all of us who refused to give up on her. That afternoon, when I arrived at Lila's school, she ran to me. No hesitation, no guardedness, just a 7-year-old sprinting into her future. You're here, she breathed. I knelt, arms open, catching her midair, and I always will be. That night, she asked if she could still call me Aunt A. I smiled into her hair. Always. But if someday you want to call me Mom, that's okay too. She was quiet, thinking hard, then whispered against my arm. Okay, Mom. Thank you for watching this story on Vengeance Within. If you believe that standing for truth sometimes means standing alone, but it's still worth it, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories of justice, family, and the courage it takes to finally speak when silence no longer protects.